than ever before. But it is also the age of a lot of trial. It is the age that we have seen some of the most challenging times for humanity. And one of this is the challenge which now Allah has brought before us of the coronavirus, which has been given the name COVID-19. Now the ayah I quoted is the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He is not shy to make the similitude of an ant, or a mosquito, afwan again, to use the similitude of a mosquito or something less, in order to show His strength and power to the entire mankind. For the one who disbelieves, when they see it, they wonder, what is the meaning of this? But for the believer, it is something that strengthens our faith and lets us know that yes, truly Allah is Allah. Laysa kamithlihi shay. There is nothing comparable to Him, and there is nothing that can come close to Him. This virus, as we know, is so tiny that the eye can't even see it. You can't see it with the naked eye. So this confirms the statement of Allah when He says He can use something smaller than the mosquito as a sign. The mosquito, we can see it. You can see it fly, you can kill it, you can use your insecticide to, basically drive it out of your home. A virus is very minute. It is you can't see it with the naked eye unless under a microscope or unless under very strong lens that scientists use today in order to identify the existence of such a virus in a human body. As we learned, or as we have learned about this virus, it came from a province called Wuhan. This is what is being speculated. From a marketplace where it is said the people there would consume certain animals, whether bats, whether snakes. This is what has been peddled around. Wallahu a'lam if this is the truth. However, if it is, as Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stipulated for us the things that are permissible for us to consume, isn't it? And very specific things that we do not consume is what Allah clearly listed out, or has listed out. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَ وَالدَّمُ وَلَحْمَ الْخِنْزِيرِ وَمَا أُحِلَّ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ بِهِ وَالْمُنْخَنِقَ وَالْمَوْقُوذَ إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ, all the way to the end of the ayah. Allah tells us the things that are prohibited for us to consume. Things like taking blood, right? Blood, or lahm al-khinzir, or pork, or anything that has been slaughtered without the name of Allah being mentioned, or anything that has been gored in any way. It didn't die, you just saw it and you take it and you eat it. All of those examples Allah has given to us. And then Allah has specified the kind of things that are halal for us to consume. There is a spiritual aspect of consuming what is haram, which ultimately has an effect on the heart. But there is also the physical aspect, which today scientists are able to teach us and show us, that when you consume things like pork or the pig itself, because of how it is created, the skin and the body retain certain organisms or bacteria that are very harmful to the body. For the person who eats it and consumes it, what you're doing is that you're taking the dirt and the organisms into your body and ultimately causing harm to your body. Similar to the one that consumes an animal while it is still alive. In Islam, it is not permissible to eat something that has not been killed in the name of Allah that is still living. The only thing you can eat without saying Bismillah on it and it is still dead, is samak, the fish. With the fish, you take it out of the water, you roast it, khalas, you eat it, it is dead, it is halal. But with meat, it is specific, you must mention the name of Allah before you slaughter and eat it. And even in how you slaughter, there is the manner we must slaughter, which allows the toxins of the blood to come out of the animal you have slaughtered. This is what Islam brings to us. So we're not allowed to eat live animals. We're not allowed to eat animals that have hair or fur the way we do as humans. So watching a group of people consume live bats, or even consume bats, they call them bat soup, or they had things like this, you see the bat with the fangs. Or one that was very disturbing of little rats or mice that were taking, dipped and eating alive. These were all very unusual things for us to see. But it is also clear why Islam stipulates this for us, because of the body itself. Now from Wuhan, this virus begins, or this virus emanated and it began to spread. It started within China and gradually spread to parts of Europe, ultimately to Africa, ultimately to America, until this very moment that it has become a pandemic. Why? Because unlike any other disease or any other pandemic, this is one that it is not even through touch, or you don't need to touch a person, it is airborne. You need to just be a few meters away from someone that has it, and you have the potential to also have it. And you could have the virus in you for weeks. You would not know that you have this virus. Some might have bodies that are immune to it, maybe because of your age or because of the antibodies or whatever reason. But it is all still by the will of Allah. So we come back to how this, for us as Muslims, how do we take this? Because today, the whole world is in panic mode. Today, the whole world is panicking. They are looking for solutions. Countries today are giving or putting out bans on other countries to come to them, because these countries today have an outbreak of this virus. It has affected the stock market. It has affected every single thing that we see today in our daily livelihood. But for some of us, it hasn't changed anything. For the believer, it is seen as probably a source of rahmah. Why? The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam had said, whoever dies from a plague, mut shahida. Whoever dies from a plague has died a shaheed. That person has died with shahada. And also, if there is a city where there is an outbreak of a plague, the believer should not leave that city but remain in it. Similar, you should not leave from another to enter the city where there is a plague. These are the teachings of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This is from our sunnah, which today we see being practiced by the world at large. The only difference is that with them they practice it with fear. But with us, it is a rahmah from Allah, and we practice it hoping for Allah to bless and protect us. So unlike the world today that is turned upside down, putting out bans on different things, saying that if you are quarantined, this protects, and yes, it is good. If you begin experiencing any symptoms, you quarantine yourself to protect others. For us as Muslims, it is now time for us to ask ourselves, why has this come? What is the reason? And how do we go back to Allah to earn Allah's rahmah? It is a mercy that Allah is letting us witness this in His time, or in this time, in our time, sorry. It is not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that dunya ta zo karshe, that the world will come to an end. Yes, it will come to an end. And there are the signs that we see that show, in terms of the prophecy of the Prophet ﷺ, that show us that truly the world will come to an end. But this is not one of those signs that will make us uphold that and say, yes, everyone get ready, the world is ending in the next 2 years or in the next 1 year or maybe tomorrow. La. They are the things that are described as alamatu sa'atul kubra wa alamatu sa'atul sughra. The signs of the end time, the major, and the ones that are minor. They are those major signs that when they come, without doubt, the hour has reached. And those signs include things mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ, like the appearance of Ad-Dajjal, physical appearance of Ad-Dajjal. Like the sun, instead of rising from the east and setting, or rising from the west and setting in the east, it would now rise from the east instead. In the narrations of Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, he says the sun will reach the east and set. And when everyone expects for it to be dark, it remains and then rises back again from the east to the west. There are different narrations or different commentaries regarding this particular hadith. Some scholars have said it is the physical sun rising. Some have said no, it is faith, Islam. It is the faith being stronger, in the west. It is, I should change this. The sun rises from the east and sets in the west. But instead, the sun would now rise from the west to set in the east. So some scholars have narrated that it could mean again that Islam becomes so strong that it shines brighter from the west, descending to the east, unlike before that it moved from the east to the west. Wallahu a'lam. But the greater and the more accurate opinion and most followed opinion is that the sun itself would rise from the west as against setting and rising from the east again. And then there is the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. These are all the signs, the end signs, that are the greatest of signs, that when they occur, it shows that clearly we have reached as-sa'a, the hour. But then there are those minor ones that will show, that will come, and those are the ones that just remind us that this hour will surely come before us. How have we prepared? What have we done to prepare for our standing with Him, our meeting with our Rabb? So this coronavirus is simply also a reminder for all of us. A reminder that we will all be held accountable before Allah. We will all return to Allah. Again, it is not for us to panic. It is not for us to tell ourselves that we will do certain things because of what we see in the world. No. But yes, we must take our precautionary measures. So things like washing the hands, which as Muslims we are already accustomed to when we perform wudu. The only difference is, yes, you can use sabun, you can use soap, you can use the sanitizers. This is all good. You can take the necessary measures. It is not wrong. And also to correct the notion of some who feel there is a conspiracy with Saudi Arabia requesting a ban on people coming into the country. It is not wrong. This is from the Sunnah. It is established by the Prophet ﷺ. He has warned us, where there is a plague, do not go into that city. And similar, do not leave that city to go out of it. So this is in line, what they have done is in line with the Sunnah. The only thing is, it is happening in our own lifetime. And that is why it is difficult. It is difficult to see the Kaaba empty, no one performing tawaf. It is difficult to look at it and not feel like, oh Allah, it is because of our sin. Because plague itself, at-ta'un, the plague, it is a punishment. No doubt about it, it is a punishment from Allah. If you look at the tariq, if you look at even the Quran, Allah sent plagues to various nations as punishment. The clearest of examples was the people of Fir'aun. Allah sent a plague upon them as punishment. So the plague itself is a punishment from Allah. As this virus spreads, it is a punishment from Allah for what we have done, for the sins that have been committed, for how man has disobeyed his Rabb. But it is a mercy as well for those who turn back to him and remember him and say, Ya Rabb, we come to you admitting our sin and turning to you because there is none besides you for us to turn to. As much as the world today feels that the scientists will come up with vaccines very soon, if Allah has not guided them to it, they will not find the cure. They will not find the cure. And for those who have not been affected by it, if Allah has not written for them to be affected by it, no matter what happens, it will never come to them. So as believers, how do we address this? How do we learn from what is happening today? And how do we cherish the times that we have so that this, instead of being a source of trauma, instead of being a source of chaos, instead it becomes a source of reflection and repentance. So the very first, which is what I have mentioned, is number one, understanding that this is a punishment and also a rahmah from Allah. This is the first and most important thing that we can take from the existence or from this current crisis we face of the plague as it ravages the entire globe. The second is that it is a time for us to turn to Allah and perform sincere tawbah. Tawbatun nasuh. Sincere tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah will not punish a people as long as they are seeking forgiveness from Him. Allah has promised He will not punish a people وَهُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ as long as they are asking Allah to forgive them. So this is the second most important thing we must learn from this crisis that we see today enveloping the entire world. That we repent to Allah. We ask Allah for forgiveness. Each and every one of us seated here knows what it is we have done or what we have not done that could earn us the wrath of Allah. It is for us to ask Allah sincerely at the times when we're seated alone or even when we're in gatherings. Oh Allah, forgive me for what I have done. Oh Allah, have mercy upon me. Oh Allah, have mercy upon the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Seek for forgiveness, because that truly is the only way of earning salvation before Allah. The third is to remember Allah fi sabahan wa fi masahan wa fi kulli waqt aw wa fi ayyi waqt. For you to remember Allah in the mornings or in the evenings or at any point in time. Why? Because that could be the last thing you do on the surface of the earth. Remembering Allah as often and as much as possible, especially the du'as that were taught by the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Making those du'as in the morning and in the evening, this helps to protect one from any and every harm. And even if Allah takes your soul, you still fall amongst those who remember Him. And as Allah states, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Remember me and I will remember you. Call on to Allah and Allah will hear your call as well. The fourth is the dua, the call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the dua we make to Him, that He protects us from this. He protects our loved ones, protects our families, protects the entire humanity, protects this ummah. Because the rate that the virus spreads, again as I mentioned, today the world is still trying to understand the trend. In some, it can exist for weeks and not show any signs. In some, it exists for a few hours and it leads to their immediate death. Today, the epicenter for the virus has moved from China to Europe. And specifically, the country known as Italy. to the point that Italy went, in terms of the numbers of those infected with the virus in 24 hours, it went from a few hundreds to a few thousands. The virus spread so fast that the entire country today has been shut down. A country of over how many million today live in fear because the virus spreads so quick you don't even know how it spreads. That is why constantly for the believer making the dua, even if it happens, you know that yes, it is Allah that willed it. It is Allah that permitted it, and you submit to Allah's will. There is no musibah that comes to a person or comes to a people or calamity that comes to a people except Allah has willed it. لَا يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. That say there is no trial that would reach us except Allah has written for this trial to come to us. So for the one who sees this today and reflects on it, he knows that yes, this is truly Allah speaking to the world. Allah is speaking to the entire humanity, the entire mankind. You have been in loss for very long. You have been distracted by this dunya from your Lord. Come back to Him. Come back to me. This is what Allah is reminding us today with what is happening. If you are the one that loved to travel, you traveled the world today. Today you are too afraid to leave this country to any other country. Isn't it? Today they say Nigeria is probably the safest place today than any other part. Or one of the safest continents is Africa because Allah has not willed for it to spread here. Let us not think for one instance that it is because of our own knowledge or our strength. This is not it. It is Allah that has not willed it to come here. We have taken the necessary steps, yes. We have tied our camel, put our trust in Allah, but ultimately it is Allah that has still protected us from this. Because were it to come here, only Allah knows the kind of catastrophe that would happen in this nation or in this part of the world. But today a lot of people are afraid to fly. A lot of people are afraid to travel. A lot of people today are even afraid to shake hands. Today you have the new ways of greeting, where you use the legs, the feet. Right? It's the feet. I've seen videos of people shaking with their feet. There was someone that made a joke that, you know, Sheikh Pantami's own way of shaking, where he did this to a woman, is now popular. The wave, yes? This is becoming popular. Some people, they don't even leave their houses, they just stay in. Why? Out of fear. And in some areas, even gathering in masajids has also been stopped. This is a rahmah that we have today. We are seated here. But as at yesterday, a lot of masajids were not performing salah, jama'ah. They were not coming to congregate and pray in the masjid. And what they have done is in line with the sunnah. But I'm bringing this up because for us, it is a rahmah that we can still enjoy this, that we still have this. It is enough for us to show gratitude to Allah and turn back to Allah. One particular disturbing video was from Kuwait, which I saw again yesterday, where the masjid made the call to salah, and in the adhan made the statement, as-salatu fi buyutikum. Observe the salah in your homes. This was what would be uttered at the adhan during the time of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam during heavy rainfall. And people would not be able to come out to the masjids. Then it would be uttered that you observe the salah in your homes. This is what is happening in certain parts of the world today. So my dear brothers and honored sisters, as we see these things, and as I mentioned, it is a rahmah from Allah, we must use this time to reflect more, to be grateful to Him, but also to seek ways of turning to Him completely. In the end, we will all leave this dunya. There is no one that will remain on this dunya. There is no one that has the power or the ability to. When we go, is already written, or this has been written by Allah Azza wa Jalla. But how we live, this is what is most important. And what we allow to affect us, or what we allow our lives to become, this is also what will enable us attain a great station with Allah Azza wa Jalla. Not your money, not your position, not your power, but the deeds you perform in your lifetime. Which brings me to the fifth affair of what we must continue or build up in this particular times we find ourselves in, and that is the performance of good deeds. Amalu salih, performance of good deeds. We should increase in all the good deeds that we perform in these times that we're in, especially in our sadaqah, our charity, because charity itself prevents harm. Charity, sadaqah, increases wealth. Charity brings blessings to the life of the one who does it. So in this time that we're in on a daily basis, find out from yourself, ask yourself, have I been charitable today? Have I given something today of what Allah has blessed me with? It doesn't have to be so much money or even money alone. There are things that Allah has given or bestowed each and every one of us here that we can give for His sake to benefit others or to benefit humanity. It could be the knowledge Allah has blessed you with. It could be a position. It could be an opportunity. It could be the wealth. It could be even the time you spend. These are all things that we can spend for the sake of Allah because it is what Allah has given us. You don't have to be the wealthiest man in the world to give for the sake of Allah. Remember, amongst the things that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned that will make a person attain Jannah with ease and attain Allah's blessings, or continuous blessings, تُطْعِمُ الطَّعَامِ, feeding the needy, feeding those who are hungry. Today we have millions who are starving in our nation. For us to feed them, we will earn such a great reward in the sight of Allah. It shouldn't be just in the month of Ramadan. It shouldn't be just when we want to provide iftar or suhoor. Some of us today have the opportunity to feed thousands or even millions, and some might just have the opportunity to feed just a few. No matter the number, do it for the sake of Allah, and you will see how Allah will open doors for you and bless you. But more than that, Allah would use that to protect you from calamities befalling you. A lot of times people don't realize this. The charity we give protects us from certain calamities that we are not aware of. And it protects us from the biggest of all calamities, and that is Jahannam. Jahannam. This is the greatest of calamity. It is not a thing of calamity to lose money. It is not a thing that you say, yes, it might form part of it. It is musibah. You lose a lot of money. You lose position. You lose a loved one. This is considered as calamity. But the greatest of calamity is for one to be thrown into Jahannam. وَإِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, may Allah protect us from it. This is the greatest of calamities. And so the one who gives sadaqah continuously and is consistent in it and does it only for the sake of Allah, gives the sadaqah only for the sake of Allah, that person is protecting themselves from the greatest calamity, and that is Jahannam. وَإِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So increasing in good deeds, especially in charity, this is part of what we must do in these times that we're in of today. In the situation we find ourselves of today, in the difficulty that we are facing, this is how we will earn the rahmah of Allah. A sixth issue or a sixth act which I would encourage us all to perform. And I'm going to start first. I want to take this first from the spiritual side before we go into the physical. We should endeavor to become more, or we should be closer to the Quran than ever before in these times. Constantly reciting the Quran, or this you can say falls under dhikr, remembrance of Allah. But I brought tilawatul Quran, recitation of the Quran, separate. Why? Because the Quran itself, as the final message from Allah Azza wa Jal, is a cure for everything. It has a cure for everything. And one of the greatest cures it gives to the heart is anxiety. Anxiety is what even takes the life of a person before what they are afraid of comes to them. Anxiety is what causes a lot of people to go into depression, to go into these feelings of loss, that there is no way out for us. Anxiety is what leads people sometimes to an early grave before their time. Even though death is, it is constant that your death comes at your time, at the time that has been written for you. But the one who is disconnected from the Quran, the one who constantly has this anxiety attacks, will put themselves in a situation whereby instead of remembering Allah in calamity, they remember the statements of the news channels. They remember the statements of the doctors. They remember the statements of the health advisors. And they forget the statement of Allah. So in this time, more than before, let us become closer to the Quran. Let us study the Quran and make the Quran a part of our daily lives. A day should not go past us except we have gone through the Quran and learned something from this book of Allah. Because it would help us to defeat anxiety. It will help us to not be taken or swayed by what we see or what we hear from the news, or on the news rather. It would help us to stay connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, earlier, and every day following the news and seeing the trends and seeing what is happening. Just before the United States had put out the ban on countries in Europe going or flying into America because of this virus, you could see that there's been a lot of agitation even prior to this for even we, or for the entire African continent, to also close its doors to people flying from Europe or any of these countries that have been affected. Us closing our borders or stopping people from flying, again, as I stated, this is from the Sunnah. It is established. Where it is done, it is for our own good. But more than that is also the effort we make to preserve the lives of those who are already infected with this ailment. Because for a lot of them, it is not their fault. For a lot of them, it has happened in the location they are in. It is how Allah has willed it. So it's not to see them as things that should be, or as individuals that are so corrupt that if they come in our midst, they will completely change and they would cause us to be like them. So what happens is, instead of empathizing with them, you begin to look at them as different. In Islam, when we see such calamities, how we must reflect on it is empathy. but not as different. Different in a bad way, in a negative way. In a way of, look, you are all, those coming from here are like this, so you are different. So we do not empathize with you. We do not consider your condition as something that we should feel sorry for you or feel bad about it. Instead, don't come here and contaminate us, which is not what the Sunnah establishes. When countries begin to do this, you begin to build walls, you begin to cause people to feel like the ailment that they have is as a result of something that they have done. Then you kill them before the ailment kills them. For us as Muslims, we empathize with the world. We do not gloat when we are not stricken by it. Again, as I stated, it is as Allah has willed, and that is why you still have certain parts of the world that the spread of the virus is so minimal, it is almost like it is non-existent. But when you see the damage that it is causing to the lives of others, as a Muslim we empathize and we pray for Allah to bring ease to them. And finally, for our own hygiene, what should we do personally in this situation apart from the spiritual side? Yes, we've been requested to maintain very good hygiene in terms of constantly washing our hands. And I began on that particular note, we are already accustomed to performing wudu. We're accustomed to using water at every point in time. Because this is cleanliness. And an-nadafa min al-iman. Cleanliness is part of iman. Water itself serves as a very good means of protecting one from this ailment or from it being ingested or spreading from one host to the other. Because the virus itself requires a host to survive. If it doesn't find a body or a host to survive in, it dies or it withers off. So constantly staying with water or washing yourselves or constantly performing wudu, this is very good. This is one of the best means physically to protect oneself from this. Quarantining yourself, if you suspect you have it, is also as important. Knowing those areas that carry out tests, if a person has been identified that they have the symptoms of it, is also important. In this part of the world, yes, Allah has been merciful to us that the cases that have been found after undergoing the series of tests and being quarantined, it's been found negative. However, don't let your guard down. We shouldn't relax or think of ourselves that, oh, it dies on the African sun. A lot of insinuation has gone around that if it enters Nigeria, it will die. Don't even tell yourself that. People began to make statements, oh, Ebola came, it died. This virus will come and also die. On a lighter note, I saw something very funny, where it was said the person who had previously tested positive for the virus is now negative, yes? They tested him again, and he became negative, which meant that the virus had died in his stream. And someone posted that, well, in Nigeria, everything dies. Dreams die in Nigeria, so viruses naturally would die as well. Wa'iyadhu billah. It's not something to joke about, right? The virus is serious. It's a serious virus. So it's not something to joke about. But still, us finding ourselves here, it is enough for us to thank Allah and know that yes, we must always continue to be cautious. So if you don't need to travel, for a lot of people who travel a lot, if you don't need to travel now, it is not a very pertinent trip you must make, please remain. Stay in your home, stay where it's safe. Again, this is another way of preventing the spread of the disease or of the virus itself. Also important is, as you stay in your homes, have as much of the disinfectants today that exist that kill germs. Use these on surfaces that you constantly make use of. Surfaces that you constantly visit. Use these disinfectants to clean such areas. Those that are pure and those that do not cause any harm. There are certain disinfectants that, because of how strong they are, they could even cause physical harm to the person who is using it. Do not make use of such if it would also lead to any form of physical harm as well. And finally, regarding this, my dear brothers and sisters, we must strive our best when this begins to, and I pray it never happens within our own communities, but if it does, then we must begin to limit or reduce participation in crowded areas. I pray it never gets to that for us in this part of the world. I pray that Allah still gives us this blessing of being able to come out to pray in the masjid, to observe Jum'ah, to be in our congregation, especially as Ramadan is coming. Ramadan is a time where we all come out to seek Allah's rahmah, and we come out in large numbers. I pray that Allah still blesses us with this ni'mah, that we do not have to begin to reduce our numbers and our gatherings in congregations. However, if that time ever comes, it is not a sign of weakness of Iman. It is not a sign that you do not have the strength, that you are a stronger believer. No. Do what is right to protect yourself and protect others as well. And ultimately, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and protect our loved ones. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this plague to be one that turns us to Him, and may He accept our repentance to Him. May all those that have been afflicted by this plague from amongst the believers, may Allah heal them and may Allah protect them. For all those that have left this world as a result of this plague, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them the death of the shaheed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and protect our loved ones. And for the entire world, the entire humanity, as believers, we never gloat at the downfall or calamity that befalls any other person or any other being. It is not a sign of belief in us. It is not a sign of Iman. Today the world is facing the calamity it is facing. We are all facing this same calamity as well. As believers, we empathize with them, and we pray that Allah uses this as a means of guiding them to Islam. May Allah forgive us all and have mercy upon us all, and may He guide our leaders and guide us all as followers as well. The Mu'adhin has arrived and he will make the adhan, after which we will take a few questions inshallah before we observe Salatul Isha. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Allah أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله
نعم نعم Okay, so the question is regarding the use of hand sanitizers and how a few of these hand sanitizers have alcohol content. Is it permissible to use them and still observe the salah with them? The alcohol in these hand sanitizers are alcohol based on their composition, organic composition, where you have carbon and hydrogen mixed. So they come from that family of ethanol, alcohol, and all of that. It is permissible for you to use it and still observe salah because it is not the alcohol that is described as khamr, which intoxicates. And where khamr itself is prohibited is when it is intoxicated. When it is consumed, that it intoxicates. This is where it is prohibited. You are not to drink khamr. It is prohibited for you to drink alcohol, right? Also, it doesn't mean you should take a bottle of beer now and pour it on your body because it's prohibited. No. But I'm trying to describe that the real prohibition is in consuming. But when it comes to the hand sanitizers, it's not the kind of alcohol of consumption. So when you use it on your hands, khalas, you can pray with it. It's similar to perfume. When you spray certain perfumes that have such alcohol content, which is not the one of consumption, then you can still observe your salah with it as well. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. Shaykhna. Wa alaykum salam. نعم How can it?
The significance of my actions and the charities. How should it be in line with our dhikr?
Okay, mashallah. Jazakallah khair. So the question is, when I was making the presentation, I spoke about doing good deeds, making istighfar, making dua. So how do our actions and also the charity also align with the dhikr that we do to protect us from the virus itself? Because the virus can be a rahmah for the believer. You see, for us as believers, we learn that what we perform, our actions, have repercussions or recompense. When I say repercussions, if it is bad, there is a repercussion for it. And if it is good, there is recompense for it. The recompense is when something good comes to that person, either in this world or in the hereafter. And so when you are making dua, or when you are remembering Allah, but your actions are completely opposite of the one who you are remembering, what He has commanded you to do, then in essence, what you're doing is drawing His anger and His punishment. I'll give a very typical example. During the life of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, there was a man known as Alqamah. Now Alqamah, he was said he was very good, he was very righteous, he prayed, he remembered Allah, this and that. But one singular deed he was doing prevented him from uttering kalimat shahada. Who can remember what it was? It was an action. What was it? He was disrespectful to his mother. He was disrespectful to his mother, and his mother became unhappy. And because of that, on his deathbed, he was prevented from uttering kalimat shahada. Can you see how action, right, has been distinguished from his remembrance of Allah? But at the point that his mother uttered the words that she had forgiven him, when the Rasul asked a few companions to go to his home and get him to utter the shahada, just before they reached his door, they were hearing him uttering the shahada, and Allah took his life. So our actions are as important when it comes to this trial that we are facing today as us making dua or us remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and perfect our actions as well. Now, one more, last question inshallah. Thank you. Okay, advice for Ramadan Umrah now with this, or even if you want to go for Ramadan Umrah, Saudi is not giving visas, Isha. Even if you want to go, unless you want to sneak in and then they catch you, subhanallah. You don't want to be in a Saudi prison. Yeah? Nigeria will be like, subhanallah. So Saudi is not giving visas, right? So even if you want to go, you can't go for Umrah in Ramadan. And subhanallah, I got news that even Hajj might be affected as well. It will not be the first time that Hajj is not being done. Again, like I said, it's only very tough for us because it is happening in our lifetime. And we can all get to see it. If it was years ago where there was no social media, no television, none of this, you wouldn't have known. But today we are all seeing it. So it's more, it's hard hitting, really. But then it is a rahmah again because we feel this way because Allah has placed faith in our hearts to feel this way. The kafir doesn't care. He's like, oh, where's the Kaaba? Who is the Kaaba? Right? But for the believer, it is a feeling of loss and disconnect when you see the Kaaba with no one around it. But also hope, because it shows the disbelievers that as Muslims, we're still worshipping Allah. So it's not the Kaaba we worship, it's Allah. Right? طيب. Sorry, the brothers here raised their hands, so the last question from the brothers here, inshallah. Someone raised their hand, then fadl. Wa alaikum salam. How? Okay. Okay, so stated on the brother mentioned about the rumor, or what is being pushed out there now, that the coronavirus was created by US scientists in order to prevent people from going for Hajj. I don't think that was it, yeah, but yes, this rumor exists that it is biological warfare. It is something that has been created by people to destroy another set of people. In fact, the theories I've heard is, currently there is a trade war going on between China and America, right? China becoming a superpower, if it already hasn't become, and America feeling that we are the superpower, so you can't take over from us. But in truth, a lot of companies go to China because it is cheaper labor. It is more profitable for them to have factories in China than in America, where you have to pay so much to your staff, and they don't want any of that. So maybe America developed it so that people stop doing things with China, which automatically that has happened. A lot of us here don't want to even hear made in China anymore. You don't want to go to China. For me, it is for a different cause, because of what they are doing to Muslims. That's why I don't want to hear about China. Not because of the virus. Either way, whether true or not, it wouldn't have happened except by Allah's will. So for me, it doesn't matter whether America did it or not, whether a scientist did it or not. It doesn't matter. What matters is Allah willed it to happen. Allah wanted it to happen. So as believers, how do we take it? How do we view it? Most important is for us to turn back to Allah. Once we do that, then inshallah our iman is saved. And may Allah make our iman strengthened, or may He strengthen our faith from this calamity that has befallen the ummah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and may He guide us all. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.